Analysis from Homelessness New South Wales has found there are double the number of short-stay accommodation listings than longer-term rentals in the state. That imbalance is even more severe in coastal housing markets, which equates to around 12 Airbnbs for every one rental property. For more, I'm joined by Rowe, the CEO of Homelessness New South Wales. Very good morning to you, Dom. Thanks for your time.
Good morning.
How did your analysis come to this conclusion that there is double the amount of short-stay rentals to longer-term rentals?
Well, we looked at data that showed the number of short-stay rentals that were in New South Wales and in certain areas, and we then compared that to data from realestate.com about long-term rentals and saw that by far and away short stays were outstripping the amount of long-term rentals available for people in New South Wales.
So you're confident, Dom, that you have captured the true picture in the state?
We think we've got a relatively good picture. We think that further work could be done to discover what is happening in other areas that are not publicly available, but definitely the statewide data is correct.
OK. Can you take me through what's happening in Sydney with respect to the numbers that you've found, and then we'll go to some of those more acute areas?
Well, in Sydney, we found that there's been a massive increase in short-stay accommodation from 15,000 to 17,000. So about a 15% increase in the last year to March 2026. So that's an extraordinary increase or growth in that particular industry in Sydney. And we know the long-term rentals are just not keeping pace with that in Sydney alone.
OK. And what about those areas that you're finding those numbers are even more acute? Where are they and what are the numbers?
So if you look in the northern rivers around the north coast, it's quite acute there. There's 5,300 short-stay accommodation rentals available, but only 300 long-term rentals available. And so in that particular part of New South Wales, we know that there are 13-to-1 ratio of short stays to long-term rentals. Now that's absolutely extraordinary. When you've got vacancy rates so low at the moment, having that many properties that are taken off that long-term rental market is clearly having an effect.
And Dom, would all those short-term rentals be able to be long-term rentals?
Not all of them, but a majority of them would be able to be long-term rentals. We know that they're in good locations, often with good amenity. That's one of the reasons why they do well on short-stay platforms and why people want to stay with them when they're on holiday. So we know that they could be good properties for people to be involved with long-term rentals.
So you're calling on the government to do something about this with the introduction of a levy. Can you talk me through your requests?
Yeah, so we think that the government should put a 7.5% levy on short-stay accommodation, and we think that that amount of money should actually go directly to homelessness services, which are suffering some of the consequences of having such strong growth in short-term rental accommodation. We think that that money could be better spent with really helping strengthen communities at a local level and making sure that homelessness services have money to deliver brokerage, rental arrears assistance and actually assist people that are escaping domestic violence situations.
Dom, we're discussing data that you've looked at, obviously, in New South Wales because you're with Homelessness New South Wales, but when you're speaking to your colleagues in other states and territories, is a similar picture emerging?
We know that there's a significant problem nationally with the amount of short-stay accommodation. It's not something that's just limited to New South Wales. And in fact, in Victoria, they recognised the problem and put in place a 7.5% levy on short-stay accommodation to try and restrict some of the growth that's happening in that particular industry.
And do you know what's happened as a result of that levy being introduced there?
That's working really well. We know that they've been able to return to homelessness services and housing over $85 million in the last year. So that's a really significant investment in an area that desperately needs that help. At the moment, we know that there's a homelessness crisis happening across Australia, and that really needs to be supported for homelessness services that are finding it really difficult at the moment, finding that they're quite overwhelmed with the level of demand. And so any support they can get is really making a difference to where it matters most.
Rowe, CEO of Homelessness New South Wales, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.